The education system in Zambia is made up of primary and secondary school. Primary school begins at age 7 and consists of grades 1 through 7. Students then move on to junior secondary, grades 8 through 9, and then senior secondary, grades 10 through 12. At the end of grades 7 and 9, students must take an exam to determine school placement for the next grade. If students score well, they're offered placement at private boarding schools, while other students are offered spots at public basic schools. But even students offered to attend boarding schools often cannot go due to the high cost. Primary schools are paid for by the government and free for all children. However, the cost of necessary items like uniforms can prevent children from attending. Secondary school is not free and requires fees, and students either attend government schools or pay even more money to attend private boarding schools. Community schools serve as an alternative option for those unable to even attend free public primary school. They don't charge tuition and don't require that children wear uniforms or fit into certain age brackets. They're located in village centers and are typically led by unqualified teacher volunteers. Zambia's education system began during colonial times under Britain's rule, but the schooling system existed only for the children of white settlers. When Zambia gained independence in 1964, their education system was severely underdeveloped. It was estimated that only 1 to 3% of the population had completed primary school. So in order to improve the educational system, the new Zambian government developed the goals to 1. Expand all education facilities, 2. Integrate the two racial systems into one, and to 3. Achieve universal primary education. In 1966, racial segregation in schools was abolished, and schooling rates began to increase. The primary school enrollment levels went from 378,000 to 810,000 in just 10 years. However, in the 1970s, the price of copper dropped drastically, crippling Zambia's economy. This resulted in a huge cut to the spending needed to improve the education system. Through the end of the 20th century, enrollment in primary and secondary schools continued to grow, while government revenue and spending fell, resulting in overcrowded classrooms and a lack of resources such as textbooks. This was compounded by the fact that during this period of growth, there was a huge shortage of people with enough education to teach primary and secondary school, leading to extremely high student-teacher ratios, especially in rural areas, as teachers typically migrated to urban areas to teach. Classrooms today remain overcrowded and under-resourced, and even though enrollment rates have grown, dropout rates remain extremely high. 39% of youth in Zambia have not completed primary school, and of those that do, only 20% enter secondary school. Some of the factors contributing to high dropout rates include the rising cost of education, particularly in secondary school, early marriages and pregnancies for girls, and long distances to school. Another issue to consider is the gender gap in education attainment levels. There's been a recent close in the gender gap in primary enrollment levels, but the gap increases drastically for secondary school. 15% of both males and females are not in primary school, while 19% of males and 36% of females are not in secondary school. Going beyond just access to education, the quality of learning in schools is still low today. The literacy rate among youth is just 64%. And when compared to other lower middle income countries, Zambia ranked in the 66th percentile for access to education, but only in the 10th percentile for literacy and learning rates. On a grade 6 learning assessment test, 44% of Zambian students scored below the lowest performance benchmark for reading, compared to just 17% of other similar income countries, and 67% of Zambian students performed below the lowest performance benchmark in mathematics. Fortunately, there has also been a lot of progress. As part of the second millennium goal to achieve universal primary education, Zambia's primary enrollment levels have gone from 80% in 1990 to 93.7% in 2010, and the proportion of pupils reaching grade 7 has gone from 64% to 90.9%. Now that significant progress has been made increasing primary school enrollment levels, we can focus on things like providing more access to resources like textbooks, increasing the number of teachers, thus reducing classroom sizes, improving quality of education and raising test scores, increasing secondary school enrollment levels, and eventually increasing overall grade 12 completion rates.
Created using Powtoon.